They're the OG history nerds. They met in high school in a year that's absurd. Their freak flag flies and opinions swirl. They're the OG history nerds. OG history nerds. Welcome, everybody. This is the pilot episode of the OG History Nerds, in which three OG history buffs, friends for over 50 years since high school, with divergent lives and journeys since then, come together to discuss books and events having to do with the shifting sands of history. My name is Pat McDonald, an entertainment reporter and film critic for HollywoodChicago.com from, naturally, Chicago, Illinois. Tom?
Pat, this is Tom Godfrey. I am a business advisor, counselor, and sometime attorney based in Northwest Indiana along the beautiful southern coast of the Lake Michigan.
Roger?
I'm an attorney as well. I was in private practice for 20 years as a civil litigator. I am currently in public service with the state of California, and I live in Los Angeles.
And your name is?
Roger Smith. Sorry.
Dr. Roger Smith. Let's be specific. We earned that title. It's Dr. Evil. I didn't go to 8 years of evil medical school to not have that title.
He's both a doctor and a lawyer. So there you go. Just like Chance the Gardener. Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
First, a quick summary of the book and the events associated with the subject of the book. The title is 26 Seconds, a personal history of the Zapruder film, written by Alexandra Zapruder, the granddaughter of Abraham Zapruder, the man who filmed the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, November 22nd, 1963, Dallas, Texas. Abraham Zapruder, the proprietor of a dressmaking company, took his Bell & Howell home movie camera to Dealey Plaza, a park near his office, to capture the image of President John F. Kennedy and First Lady Jackie as they paraded by in a motorcade. Inadvertently, his camera recorded what is called the most important motion picture in film history, the assassination of President Kennedy, the Zapruder film. In that context, there is probably only one family who could talk about the history, complexities, and personal elements of the so-called Zapruder film, and that is the Zapruder family itself. The memoir, 26 Seconds, A Personal History of the Zapruder Film by Alexandra Zapruder, is a sometimes melancholic, sometimes incredible, sometimes bizarre history of that unique strip of celluloid told from the perspective of the bearer and legacy of the family name, even as she was only 1 year old when her famous grandfather died. From her discovery of her ancestors' place in history at 10 years old, Ms. Zapruder uses her status and experience as a nonfiction author to weave the intricate and complicated history of the film, from the background roots of Abraham Z., who escaped to the U.S. from the pogroms against Jews in Russia and Poland to eventually become a successful businessman in Dallas, to the actual day of the filming. Her details include Abe Zapruder's camera and its mechanical inner workings. He was an avid home movie maker, to the immediate aftermath of the tragedy, which included what can only be described as the clown car attempts at getting the film developed on 11/22/63 and into the hands of the Secret Service. Also covered is the odd journey of the film's ownership, how the Time Life Company purchased the rights one day after the assassination, and how they effectively squelched public viewership of the most important piece of filmed evidence for 12 years, thereby opening the Pandora's box of conspiracies, which led to the resale of the film to the Zapruder family, with Alexandra's father becoming the steward. To finally, the purchase of the film by the U.S. government in the late 1990s, the arbitration of the sale is one of the most surreal moments in the memoir's timeline. Along the way, Ms. Zapruder tells the burden of being a Zapruder, of her father's strange journey as steward of the film, the arts, politics, conspiracies that the 26 seconds generated, and finally, the meaning of it all from the perspective of someone who lived most of her life with the name and history. It's on the memoir 26 Seconds, A Personal History of the Zapruder Film by Alexandra Zapruder. Footnote: Abraham Zapruder died in 1970 at the same Parkland Hospital in Dallas that JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald, and Jack Ruby died. History creates its own mysteries. Now, since we do have two lawyers on this panel, I thought it would be appropriate for the three of us to have opening statements on the overall impressions of the book. We begin with Tom Godfrey.
Thank you, Pat. I appreciate that. May it please the court. I find this book to be a fascinating combination of accidents and atrocities all rolled into one. It's actually reminds me of the days of the home movies, because this is a guy doing a home movie. It's just that simple. A simple man with an interesting background decides he wants to continue his fascination with home movies, and that's exactly what he does. And everything from that point forward completely changes his life and his family's life. That's extremely unique. Today, an event like this would have 5,000 cell phone cameras showing you every angle of everything that took place. But back then, we got one guy trying to do a little home movie, a couple other people with cameras, and the television presence is basically zero. So it's an amazing combination of things. I think, as Abe aptly quoted, I think it's one of two favorite quotes in the book. He says, basically, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It just tells you sort of the burden that he bore in that setting. And that's fascinating to me. So I this sort of ordinary citizen in the wrong place at the wrong time, certainly one of the big impressions. Second impression, basically, to me in this setting is media institutions basically shaping public memory. And in this setting here, you have Life magazine, part of Time Incorporated, which was a staple in everybody's life back then. You went into a house. I was a magazine guy all the time. So you saw Time magazine, Life magazine, National Geographic, Women's Day, Newsweek, whatever it was. That was kind of the standard, the stuff you saw in all the doctor's offices. But Life magazine to me was such a presence because it was a big magazine. It was bigger than everybody else. Fabulous color pictures, everything about it. And to me, it was viewed as an archon of the time, and that they would print the truth. I mean, truth being whatever it is, but back then, I don't think we questioned the truth quite as much. But it was a huge thing, and the whole combination of trying to do something decent with a complete indecency is so unique. I'm reminded that by the mid '80s. We have Don Henley doing a song, Dirty Laundry, which was basically, it really doesn't matter. Get the widow on the set. We need dirty laundry. That's where we had gotten in 20 plus years. Whereas back here, the press was much more mindful of things like, we're not going to show the infidelities of presidents and other things like that. We're going to be much more We're not going to show, the president smoking a cigarette or whatever the case may be. Whereas today, if we can get him in a compromising position, let's do it. If he's in blackface, let's do it. If he's at a party with people, let's do it. That's kind of the way the world went. So those, I think those are two, at least initial things. The third thing to me, and it's very topical today, is the whole conspiracy culture basically pops out of anywhere where there isn't enough information. And I would note that sociologically, as humans, the whole concept of mistrust and not trusting people is a genuine survival instinct. Otherwise, if you trusted every tiger that walked up to you, you probably didn't last very long. But, as a group, we tend to do that. We trust in our group. We don't trust in others. And this really, showed how and to what degree that whole concept of conspiracy could become such an impact on people. And obviously it's blossomed and gone on for multiple years. So to me, big factor with that conspiracy and sort of the lack of trust. And then when you don't have enough information, you fill in the blanks all the way through. It was stunning to me. I also think it kind of adds to the fact that, we started using, from a legal perspective, sort of visual evidence became a bigger factor now in the way in which and the way in which the police did what they did, and the way, criminal cases and things like that took place. Obviously, here there was no criminal case. There was no filing against anybody in a huge trial and all those types of things, notwithstanding Jim Garrison's efforts, obviously, but it is what it is. So, yeah, it's a fascinating thing all the way around.
Roger?
I have two big takeaways from the book, from two very small parts of the book. Number one, I guess, much of the book has to deal with, or deals with, Abe Zapruder and his family dealing with the deep discomfort of profiting off this 26 seconds of infamy. And also their unending uncertainty about how to be good stewards of this historical piece of historical evidence. But what really touched me was the lingering psychological impact that those 26 seconds that Abe Zapruder filmed had on him. In the book, Alexandra relates an incident that occurred several years after the events of November 1963. The family sitting around the dinner table, and one of those family members upbraids Abe and just takes him to town for still obsessing about what he witnessed that day. And that really got me, because I'd never thought about that before, in part because every time I see those 26 seconds, it's like a gut punch. It just floors me. And I know what's happening, what's going to happen. And I knew the first time I saw that 26 seconds, I knew what was going to happen. But poor Abe Zapruder, he did not know what was going to happen. I mean, he was, when he looked through his viewfinder, he was there to record a person he liked and admired, a president of the United States. He was there sitting on that little concrete abutment out of joy. He was expecting to be filled with joy. And his day ended in horror. And when he was looking to that camera, he had no advance warning about what was going to happen. And, that anecdote about his family upbraiding him for being still obsessed with what happened, I mean, that really killed me. And it must have stayed with him the rest of his life, which did not last very long.
Right.
He died, in 1970 at Parkland Hospital, where President Kennedy and Governor Connolly were treated. So that's my first kind of small takeaway. The second one is that Alexandra tells a tale, a kind of horrifying, cautionary tale about aggressive reporters. And this kind of ties in with what Tom was saying. She tells the less than flattering tale of Dan Rather. Today, there's at least on my part, an expectation that the media is going to behave abominably rather than admirably when they're out trying to source a story, get a story, and then tell the story. But I didn't think that happened back in 1963. I mean, 1963, you had Walter Cronkite, you had Edward R. Murrow, you had giants in the media industry, and these were people of great heft and weight and credibility and stature. And I did not think that they or their underlings or the organizations they worked for would do absolutely anything possible to get the story. And yet that is exactly what happened. I mean, Rather was so aggressive in his pursuit of getting a copy of that film that he broke a promise to Abe Zapruder not to tell it. And not only did he tell the story in contradiction to the promise he made to Abe Zapruder, but he told it inaccurately. Which led to all kinds of conspiracy theories. So those are my two small, big takeaways.
Excellent. Okay, my opening statement. November of 1974, approaching my religion teacher of all people to give an unsolicited report to my freshman classmates. Now, ever since the assassination of John F. Kennedy, my family, mostly through my father, passed along a deeply unhealthy obsession with the events of 11/22/63 that I possess to this day. Now, since the year previous to my class report, when I was in 8th grade, I collected all the newspaper memorabilia, including my father's personal magazine and newsprint archive from the era. And one of those media remnants was Life magazine, as Tom mentioned, who then owned the rights to the Zapruder film and their story. And the cover of their magazine was a story, A Matter of Reasonable Doubt, about the Oswald single shooter theory. For its print presentation, it used a Zapruder film, and it was probably my first encounter with its existence. Now, I gave the presentation to my high school religion class on the 11th anniversary of the assassination, November 22nd, 1974, a Friday, which was the same day of the week the assassination took place. Now, the teacher, whose name escapes me, I don't know if you guys remember, gave a rather poignant intro to my talk. He remembered pointing to a sunny fall day outside our windows, that the day of the assassination was similarly a nice day. I could tell, even my 14-year-old self, that he was reliving the day through his manner. Now, I don't know if either of you were in that classroom, but then I proceeded to present the case against the lone assassin for the first time of my many ponderings regarding the event. Now, I bring this up because, again, it defines my overall impression of the 26 Seconds book. That the assassination itself is a personal journey, whether you're interested in it at the level I am or you discover it in a cursory way. Because no matter at what generation or timing you encounter this historic event, the impression must always be this time in U.S. history changed everything and broke open what we know to be the quote, unquote 1960s. The emotional palette that the Kennedy murder realized was to me a Pandora's box of anger, disillusionment, and a fundamental shift in the trust in governmental institutions. Which brings us to Alexandra Zapruder and her take on the whole thing of 11/22/63. In 4 words, it was ultimately personal. A grandfather she never knew, he died of cancer in 1970 when she was 1 year old, is the centerpiece of a whole industry of speculation and history in a collision course that is mostly wreckage. In the precise historian's way, Alexandra is a nonfiction author after all, she applies to a family history of a notorious artifact and her personal journey from discovering as a 10-year-old to becoming the archivist of the strange trip of the film. And it was her own family, and that was remarkable to be. Last 4 takeaways. Abraham Zapruder was an immigrant escaping an oppression who found the American dream, which evolved to an American nightmare, just because he wanted to do the right thing for his country and his family. Incredible to me. Alexandra's father, Henry, was practically a tragic Shakespearean character in how he had to protect and shield the film at the same time. And finally, the money and the law. What does 26 seconds of celluloid mean when it captures the ultimate history event? What's it worth? What does the family who owns it have to endure? And what does it mean to the United States of America? The history in this book represents to me a different era of manner, culture, and thought through Abraham Zapruder and the rest of the madness that evolved, that broke open from everyone and everything associated with November 22nd, 1963. And now we will head to questions, sirs. And the first question to you both is, what was your first encounter with the Zapruder film, and how did it affect you vis-a-vis the assassination and the particular events surrounding it? Tom?
I hate to be the one who gets to mention Geraldo Rivera first, but thank you. I recall knowing about the Zapruder film, but it almost as though the Zapruder film, it wasn't a home movie. It had never been referenced to me as a home movie, and I use that term in my opening because so I'm trying to remind, it's a home movie. It's a guy just trying to do a home movie who didn't even want to bring the camera that day and shows up anyway, and then everything falls on him at that point. What do you do next? but it was, I remember watching that Goodnight America program in 1975
Right.
because I'd heard about it and wanting to see what this is. And I'm watching with my father at the time as well, too. And of course, Geraldo's being Geraldo all the way through on it. I think Dick Gregory's there as well, too, and Robert Grodin as well. And I just remember watching it and thinking, and it was silent in the house when we watched it, as well as I'm sure it would have been for every household, other than Geraldo. So it would have been then. That would have been my first true exposure to it. Curiosity before then, but that really solidified it.
Roger?
I'm going to be an echo of Tom. That was the first time I saw it, the first time I've heard of it. And I remember most about it was the silence and the fact that there is no real sound. And that, to me, added so much more gravity and weight to it. And I just remember being shocked. And I still have that same feeling as I mentioned earlier. Every time I see it, it floors me. The violence, not only to this one individual, but the violence that then came to this whole country as a result.
Well, we're 3 for 3. That was my first encounter with it as well. You mentioned Robert Grodin. He takes a position in the book. He's the one that absolutely, that whole thing at Life magazine where somebody left him to photograph all the individual frames that he put together and created the whole black market for the film, was quite remarkable to me. But the thing I remember about the Geraldo show, again, in my obsession, was that I had to see it. There was no way I was not going to see it. And I think probably that rating was, I think 50 million people watched that show. But, later, of course, I found out about Grodin and Dick Gregory and all that and how they facilitated the whole path to it. And again, it was very interesting to think that Rivera and ABC just said, we're going to show it and see what happens after that. And then nothing happened. And that, again, led to the next evolution of film, which was for the Zapruders to get it again. So what was the most fascinating element or situation from the book that stuck with you, Tom?
The personal side of it is certainly a huge part of this, and for Abe Zapruder to immediately after this realize the magnitude of what he has. Again, he, like you said, immigrant. He's a dressmaker, dress copier, dressmaker, whatever you want to call it, and a happy kind of a fun-loving guy. I could see him, playing the guitar and enjoying his family, and really just, that whole culture is what it is. And it was a very strong culture, within certain, ethnic groups and stuff like that. There's a strength and a bond to that sort of thing. And for him to immediately say, I need to get a copy of this to the authorities, they need to see this. That's an amazingly, clear view. I think after I got done throwing up, I don't know if I would have been able to form that thought enough, other than to simply say, I'm just going home. I have witnessed something. So, and remember, he's like, this is like Rear Window, on it with a magnifying glass in front of you. You're not just looking at something like everybody else is in a giant stadium with 100,000 other people. You can see it on a viewfinder with clear vision. That to me is just so traumatic. And just for him to have that thought to say, I'm going to go do this, and this is the direction I'm going in. And then to want to, after that, basically say, I want to give this to somebody who's going to protect it and protect that family, because this should not be out everywhere. And additional comment I make to that is I just wish he had been clear enough in thinking, and I'm not saying I would have been, I had given it to the Kennedy family and been like, this is yours. You guys deal with this. I don't want to have anything to do with it. But that really struck me right from the jump.
Abraham Zapruder's moral rectitude, I think, comes through loud and clear in this book. The fact that he, as Tom mentioned, immediately wanted to get this to the authorities, and that without any kind of profit. I mean, today, people are posting up videos almost as soon as they can and trying to monetize it. He was very reluctant about trying to monetize it. It was not something he wanted to do at all. Um, and I guess the second thing that kind of struck me from the time is that all the effort that the feds went through to try and get a copy of this film. It wasn't like today at all, where you have a film on your phone and you automatically have it and it's printed. They spent hours running around Dallas, Texas, trying to get copies made of this film. And it just shows me how far we've come in terms of technology and also the way we use a testimony, if you will, in the form of video evidence. Abraham Zapruder not trying to make any money off it initially, just taking it to the authorities without first posting it somewhere. And the fact that we have instantaneous access to photographic evidence now that we didn't have before.
Quite remarkable. I guess I was just fascinated with Abe Zapruder. What happened, well, at least I knew what happened as far as the negotiation for the film and the events after he took the camera, and how a reporter from Dallas came up to him and said, "What do you got?" and got him in touch with Forrest Sorrells, the head of Secret Service in Dallas. And then, like, almost a clown car of them trying to get to this thing, processed. But it was his reflection at the end of it all, pulling up to his house, sitting in his car, not really knowing what to do or say, and then going in and sharing it with his family. You just felt the weight of that. When somebody like Alexandra, who's related to him, tells you that story, that that's the real deal. It's probably not been, told elsewhere because, she had access to her grandmother and all the relatives around him. So she knew that story. And that really was the weight of it. The weight of it really impressed me. So now this is a kind of a controversial one, but what are your feelings about the sensitivities of the Zapruder family, starting with Abe on down, as to how they preserved the film while at the same time profiting from it? Are there elements of anti-Semitism after reading her story?
It's a loaded but necessary question. I'm glad you kind of worded it and phrased it that way. When I didn't know the full backstory, I had certainly drawn some conclusions about the situation. But then you go to law school and they teach you stuff and you pay attention and you realize that the government can't come and go and do as it pleases. And if it does, it's got to pay you, some form of compensation for it. That really sort of changed the tune on a lot of things that have taken place that I've seen over time, where it's like, yeah, they're not really profiting in that setting. That's not really exactly what's going on. What's fascinating is the family never stops being easily the most virtuous people in the entire book relative to the impact of this film and how it should be handled and addressed and so on and so forth. You reference it. There was no honor among thieves when it came to, and literally thieves, when you're talking to the press all the way through on this, because, even, the Geraldo's presentation was basically a stolen copy as well, too. So it's like it didn't matter at that point in time. But the fortitude of that family to stay focused in that setting, candidly, by today's measurements, they would have gotten a lot more money than what they got in that setting, what was done in arbitration as well. So I understand it. I have less of a complaint about it in that setting. I did find it curious that Tom Snyder's name shows up as having an influence in this, because I always remember Tom Snyder interviewing Meatloaf, and he's talking about Paradise by the Dashboard Light, and Meatloaf goes through the whole thing and gets to the end. He goes, well, so now I'm praying for the end of time so I can end my time with you. And Snyder just deadpan looks right in the face. Okay, we'll be right back after that. And just like it had no impact on him whatsoever. But he, in effect, guilts, Time Life to sell the thing for $1. to Abe Zapruder. And again, we're back to the Zapruder family basically being the national archivist once again, and then trying to find a way to move it forward.
I was struck as well by the constancy of the Zapruder family's moral rectitude. I mean, they never really wavered from trying to be, the best steward possible for this piece of history. And I'm not certain that I would like to think I would have acted with the same moral rectitude. I'm not certain I would have. I mean, the temptation of all kinds of money and all kinds of ways to profit, that's a very sore temptation. And I'm sure it was a very sore temptation back then. And the fact that they stayed true through decades really is a credit to them and is an example to the rest of us, I think.
And I'll just add just one more thing. One of the things that fascinated me was the arbitration between the government and their lawyers to determine a price. And this was what, 1998, 99? And still, they were thinking 40 million at auction. Now, I can't even imagine if something came up today. That's $1 billion plus for that, to own that film. So in a sense, it was the stewardship of the Zapruder family that allowed it to be now shared with everybody who wants to do the research. 6-4 Museum owns the rights. The government preserves it. Everything with this film as an artifact has been allayed. Why? Because of the Zapruder family. Okay, we're down to our closing arguments, but first, in one sentence, who did the assassination and why? Tom.
Government conspiracy, CIA, FBI, all in conjunction with a patsy named Lee Harvey Oswald.
Lee Harvey Oswald, all by himself.
Wow. I'm with you, Tom. It was a concerted effort by the CIA and governmental factors to make it happen. So, closing statements. We start with Tom.
I would state that, and it's a personal preference to me, I liked her writing style a lot. I kind of would have liked the story to have been sort of with one tone all the way through. Write it as if from family perspective from the beginning through to the end and have it transfer in effect. She's still narrating the entire story all the way through, but I would like that probably a little bit more than it kind of bounces a little bit for me. And I'm okay with that, but I would want one chapter where it's like it's being told in almost real time. And then the next chapter after that could be more technical, and then another chapter like that. But I really enjoyed the way in which she tells the story. She's an easy read. She did her research. She did her homework. I like that she references a lot of documentation. That's a huge plus to me. I think anybody who's interested in knowing more about the backstory of again, the most significant piece of film in history, I laughed to myself because I thought about it and thought, what would be another thing I really would have want the history for? And the only thing that came to mind was Wilt Chamberlain scoring 100 points in a game of which we have no video. But I think it's easily a 4 out of 5. And if I did, half ratings, I do 4 out of 5. There were a lot of things in there I didn't know, and it really pleased me to learn those things and to sort of see the Keystone Cops at the beginning of this book and the way in which everything got done. And literally, you keep coming back to me. We're going back to the Zapruders every time to basically right the ship.
Being a JFK fan and a periodic consumer of literature about the assassination, I really look forward to reading this book. And at the end, I found myself being very happy about spending time with it. As Tom mentioned, it is extremely well researched. I'm a big fan of footnotes, and there are gobs of them. And so I really appreciate that because it gives heft to the story that she's writing and telling. It's immensely credible. I also agree with Tom on the fact that the story is told in a very honest and in an engaging and in a way sometimes very charming manner. I mean, she, is narrating this story, but she's not afraid to put herself in there and interweave her own personal feelings about what happened in a gentle manner. My only reservation, and this is probably going to tell a whole lot more about me than about the book, is that the book is not a compelling page turner. It's a dutiful recitation about a lot of legal wrangling. And that can be fascinating. But for a guy who spent 30 years toiling in the vineyards of legal disputes, it left me with a meh feeling.
Yeah.
That being said, I give it 3.5 stars out of 5.
Okay, very good. And finally, I stood on the same pillar in Dallas's Dealey Plaza as Abraham Zapruder. I took my pocket computer out, that's also a phone, and a video camera, and shot the exact same angle as Abe did. It was a moment that, to me, was as close to touching history as you can get. And I viewed the story as an American absurdity, but at the same time, I've tried to place myself back into an America still flush with post-World War II pride, who elected a new thought process through Kennedy and his best and brightest administration. But what Abraham Zapruder captured with the camera was the end of something that we'll never know. And for that act gave us an experience that shook the very foundations of who we are as a country and what we were to become. It only took 26 seconds. Rating for me, of course, 5 out of 5. Must read for insight into the film and its aftermath. Now I'm a little biased. So that's it. Thank you very much. And if you want to do this again, I'm willing. I even have
I think we should,
Yeah.
I think we should do this every couple of months, whether it's
Excellent.
filmed or not. I think we should all get together and talk. That's what I think.
Concur.
Did you
I
get
second the motion.
All right. That's it. Goodbye. OG History Nerds.